dawn of time we came, moving silently down to the centuries, living many secret lives, struggling to reach the time of the gathering, when the few who remain will battle to the last. No one has ever known we were among you, until now. Hey guys and gals, it's your buddy Drew with Living History's Mysteries and Three-Eyed Raven Productions. You know, so often when I'm looking for those interesting stories, those interesting people, those myths, those legends throughout history, I run across something so odd, something so unique. I have to tell you guys about it. As many of you probably recognized the beginning of the video, it's from the movie and television show franchise Highlander. That's how many of us, in my age group anyway, the 70s and 80s kid, were introduced to immortals. But believe it or not, the story of immortals and immortality go back hundreds and hundreds of years. They're even mentioned in the Bible. People living 800, 900, 1,000 years or longer. Now granted, the Highlander franchise, that was created as a college writing project back in 1986 by this man right here. He's the director and screenwriter who was just trying to pass a class and came up with a great idea one day standing in Scotland looking at a suit of armor and thought to himself, I wonder what it'd be like if this guy was alive today.
You cannot die, MacLeod. Accept it.
Tell me, how did it happen, for God's sake?
Why does the sun come up? Or are the stars just pinholes in the curtain of night? Who knows?
The story I found for you guys today is from an actual documented historic figure, the Count of Saint Germain. He has a mysterious beginning, a beginning that no one knows. No one knows exactly where he came from. No one knows exactly where his parents came from. No one knows exactly who his parents were. They've made educated guesses, but no idea, because he himself, and this is where it gets interesting, claims to have been around since the dawn of time. He told stories to royalty all over Europe about being at the crucifixion, being at the time of Charlemagne. This man is shrouded in mystery, but I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I'm going to let you guys check this out. The Count of Saint Germain is probably one of the most mysterious men throughout all of history. It was said that he was a man of infinite wealth. He spoke many, many different languages from all over Europe. He was a master at multiple musical instruments. He was an expert swordsman. And it's said that he studied alchemy, science, and the arts. First-hand accounts of people who met them throughout their lives said he never aged a day. People throughout the ages have called him the man that knows everything, the Wonder Man, and the man that does not die. The Count of Saint Germain's actual name is unknown. His life is also a mystery. No one knows anything about his birth, country of origin, or his childhood. There are many possibilities of the origins of the Count of Saint Germain, one being he was the son of Prince Francis Rákóczi of Transylvania. This would account for his wealth and fine education, as he was a man of immense knowledge. Other reports identify him as the illegitimate son of Maria Anne of Pfalz-Neuburg, the widow of Charles II of Spain. Other accounts say that he was alive in the time of Jesus Christ and attended the wedding at Cana, where the young Jesus would turn water into wine. The Count's legend is so great that he apparently claimed to have received the staff of Moses from one of Moses' great-grandsons in Babylon in the time of Cyrus the Great, who was the founder of the Persian Empire. This would have been around 530 to 600 BC. Throughout his life, he created a confusing web to conceal his real name and origins and used different names, depending on the people who he was visiting. However, the name which stuck was the Count of Saint Germain. When he courted European royalty and nobility in the 18th century, he would leave the rich and royalty in awe of his vast knowledge of science. He also knew the history of nearly every nation and could recount tales from thousands of years ago, as if he was present at the time. He would play the violin, which would move people and leave them in tears. In addition, he spoke French, German, Dutch, Spanish, Portuguese, Russian, English, Chinese, Latin, Arabic, ancient Greek, and was even familiar with Sanskrit. The idea that the Count may have been immortal came to be in 1760, where the Count was visiting Paris that year. The Countess von Georget had heard the Count had arrived, and the home of Madame de Pompadour, the mistress of King Louis XV of France, the elderly Countess was questioning this as she had met the Count in Venice in 1710, some 50 years ago. When she met the Count again, she was flabbergasted to see that he hadn't aged a day, and she proceeded to ask him if it was his father that she had met in Venice. The Count replied, "No, madame. I myself was living in Venice at the beginning of this century. I had the honor to pay you court." To them, the elderly Countess then replied, "Forgive me, but that is impossible. The Count I knew in those days was at least 45 years old, and you from the outside are that age at present." "Madame, I am very old," he said with a mysterious smile. "But then you must be 100 years old," said the Countess. The Count then replied, "That is not impossible." The Count then provided details of their previous meetings and what life was like in Venice 50 years earlier. The Count would travel to England, and he would contribute some of his own musical creations to Lincoln's Stanza de Luce, an opera performed at the Haymarket Theatre in London. The Count would then be arrested in London on suspicion of espionage, but was released without charge. Horace Walpole, the Earl of Oxford, underwriter, mentioned the Count in a letter which stated, "The other day they seized an odd man who goes by the name of Count Germain. He's been here these 2 years and will not tell who he is or where he comes from. He sings, plays the violin wonderfully, composes, mad, and not very sensible. They call him an Italian, a Spaniard, a Pole, a somebody that married a great fortune in Mexico and ran away with her jewels to Constantinople. The Prince of Wales has grown very curious about him, but in vain. He was too great a musician to not have been famous." The Count is then described as pale with extremely black hair and a beard. He's also dressed magnificently and had several jewels. Even his shoes were studded with them. The Count then appeared in the French court around 1748, and he was employed by Louis XV for diplomatic missions. The Count would dine with Giacomo Casanova and would be described in his memoirs. The memoirs detailed their first meeting in Paris in 1757. He wrote, "The most enjoyable dinner I had was with Madame de Robert, who came with a famous adventurer known by the name of the Count of Saint-Germain. Individual, instead of eating, talked from the beginning of the meal to the end. I listened to him with the greatest attention. It may be said that he was a conversationalist. He was unequaled. He was a scholar, linguist, musician, and chemist, good-looking, and a perfect ladies' man. He gave them cosmetics and flattered them with his extraordinary knowledge, intended by nature to be the king of impostors, would say in an easy, assured manner that he was over 300 years old and that he knew the secrets of the universe, medicine, and that he possessed a mastery over nature, and gave them diamonds, professing himself capable of forming them out of 10 or 12 small diamonds, one large one, without any loss of weight. All of this, he said, was a mere trifle to him, notwithstanding of his barefaced lies. I thought he was an astonishing man." In 1762, the Count then traveled to Russia, where he allegedly was involved with Catherine the Great's ascension to the throne. Under her rule, Russia grew larger, its culture was revitalized, and it was recognized as one of the great powers worldwide. In 1774, the Count would return to France when Louis XVI occupied the throne. He warned him of a revolution that would come to pass 15 years later. He was next seen in 1779 when the Count arrived in Altona, a borough of Hamburg. He met up with Prince Charles of Hesse-Kassel, who had great interest in secret societies. The Count showed the prince several of his gems and told him he knew a better method to color cloth. The prince was impressed with the Count and would let him work in a laboratory and would supply him with materials so he could proceed with his project. The Count and prince would create jewelry together, and the prince would recount that he was the only person the Count trusted. He told the prince that he was the son of a Transylvanian prince, Francis Rakoczy, and that he had been 88 years old when he arrived in Altona. The Count was recorded to have died in his residence in the laboratory on the 27th of February, 1784. He was buried the next day in a private grave in Nikolai Church in Eckernford. Now, for any ordinary man, that would have been the end of the story, but not for the Count. There have been many recorded sightings and meetings with the Count up to this day. Official records of Freemasonry show that they chose the Count as their representative for a convention in 1785. Oddly enough, in 1821, the Comtesse d'Ademar, who was a French court official and memoir writer, recounted a conversation she had with the Count. "I have seen Saint-Germain again. Each time, to my amazement, I saw him when the Queen was murdered, and on the eve of the murder of the Duke of Berry. The last time I saw him was in 1820. Each time he looked to be a man no older than his mid-40s. In 1821, the Count would take on yet another identity. A man named Albert Vandam, who wrote in his memoirs that he had met someone that looked just like the Count of Saint Germain. He wrote, he called himself Major Fraser, lived alone and never alluded to his family, and moresoever was lavished with money, though the source of his fortune remained a mystery to everyone. He possessed marvelous knowledge of all the countries in Europe at all periods of time. His memory was absolutely incredible, and curiously enough, he said he acquired his learning elsewhere than from books. Major Fraser would then disappear without a trace and never be seen or heard from again. In 1870, Napoleon was so interested in the undying Count that he would put commission together to collect information about him. The commission was stationed at the Hotel de Ville. Just 1 year later, a mysterious fire would break out, destroying all the information regarding the Count. In later years, many other people would come forward and would claim to have met the Count. Everyone who came into contact with this man realized he was not ordinary. Some thought he was a liar, others thought he was an extraordinary man with the wisdom of a man who had lived many lifetimes. Who was the Count? Was he the son of a Transylvanian prince? And did he really die? Why do people still have claimed to have seen the Count, and why does this name appear in records after his death? This man is truly immortal, changing his name each century. He is certainly the most mysterious person I've ever read about. Now, to add just a little bit more mystery to the already mysterious history of the Count de Saint Germain, in 1902 in New Orleans, a man named Jacques Saint Germain moved into the French Quarter. He claimed to be the direct descendant of Count Saint Germain. He spoke all the same languages, played the same instruments, and told the same stories of centuries worth of travels around the globe. He looked just like the Count in all of the Count's portraits. He, like the Count, was around 45 years old. The legend of a woman who had leapt from his balcony and into the street, breaking both of her legs, surfaced in New Orleans around this time. She had hysterically told men who had helped her that Jacques had attacked her and bit her on the neck, drawing blood. When the police investigated, they found that Jacques and most of his belongings vanished overnight. They did find several bottles of red wine, which later turned out to be blood. Some people in New Orleans believe Saint Germain still lives there from time to time. But today, they call him Vampire Jack. Welcome back. It's like I said in the beginning, the Count of Saint Germain is shrouded in mystery. No one knew his real name. No one knew where he came from. All they knew were his stories. And even though there's a registered death, there's many registered deaths for him. People through the centuries have reported seeing this man. And even still today, people report seeing an individual, very wealthy, very mysterious, that still resemble him. Is this man truly an immortal? Do immortals walk among us? He was an alchemist, he was a scientist, and he swore that he had broke into the secrets of the universe. Was immortality one of those secrets? All we have to go on is the diaries. All we have to go on is the journals and the stories by the people through history that's met him and the people still today who claim to see him. But that's what history's mysteries are all about. That's all I got for you guys today. As always, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. God bless you. God love you. We do. We'll see you out there. Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Back by popular demand, the first Ghost-orama of 2023 is happening Saturday, June 3rd at the Eden Springs Park, 793 M139 in Benton Harbor, Michigan. There'll be paranormal groups, Ghostbusters, spooky vendors, live local bands, an after-hours ghost tour, a killer car show, food trucks, disc jockey, and much, much more. It's all happening June 3rd, 2023 at Eden Springs Park at 793 M139 in Benton Harbor, Michigan. Check out the free outdoor market from 1 to 7 and the after-hours ghost tour from 9 to 11 p.m. From the legendary Sea of David religious encampment. It's all happening June 3rd, 2023 at Eden Springs Park in Benton Harbor, Michigan. Be there, or, well, you know. Hey guys and gals, it's your buddy Drew with Living is... I choked on the name. God. Ugh.